Now, moving on to other news now, national polling has Kamala Harris slightly ahead of Donald Trump on the final stretch of the US presidential election campaign. Ultimately, though, the result will come down to a handful of states. 7 of them are considered battlegrounds, and they could effectively go either way, and with it, key electoral college votes in the race to secure the magic number of 270. So they are Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
This is not a normal situation, is it, huh?
The two leading candidates have been targeting them in the final stretch to polling day as Republicans and Democrats try to sway undecided voters. The swing state with the most at play, holding 19 coveted electoral college votes, is Pennsylvania. Now, Sarah Smiles Persinger is a journalist and editor at the United States Studies Centre who lived in Pennsylvania for 11 years, and she joins us now from Sydney. Sarah, thank you. Now, we know this election looks like it's going down to the wire. You lived in this swing state of Pennsylvania for more than a decade, in a swing county there. That makes for a highly charged environment 2 weeks out from the election.
Certainly. And I think I should probably mention that the town that I lived in, Erie, Pennsylvania, which is on Lake Erie, is quite a sleepy town on a normal week. But around election time, we saw a flurry of visits from politicians. In 2016, we had Trump. He came and did a big rally at our stadium. We had Bernie Sanders when he was the presidential candidate. We had so many people coming through. It was quite extraordinary that such a small county, only 270,000 people, would play such an outsized role in the election. But that's certainly the case for swing counties in swing states.
The election, each candidate needs 270 votes from the Electoral College, and really more than 200 in each case effectively considered baked in. So that's why these 7 swing states are so important. They will decide this. Pennsylvania is the big one, though, isn't it? 19 of those votes.
That is correct. So it is the jewel, the prize amongst the 7 battleground states. So with 19 electoral college votes, the Harris and Trump campaigns really needed. Trump has actually made 20 visits to the state, and Kamala she's about 10 visits. So he's really invested a lot of time there, as we saw with him moonlighting in McDonald's over the weekend. So, and in particular, that McDonald's was in Bucks County. It's a suburb of Philadelphia that is narrowly split between Republicans and Democrats. So he's really focusing, both campaigns are focusing on swing counties in swing states where the election will be decided by a razor-tight margin.
And so, I mean, as you say, a lot of time spent there, other than serving some fries, as Trump did. How would you say each candidate has campaigned in Pennsylvania? What have the tactics been there?
The ground game is always to get out your base. So you see Trump doing that with his circus-like MAGA rallies, which he's held across the state. You see Harris, she needs to run up the score in those urban centers in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh. And she's counting on a coalition of college-educated voters, minorities, women. Her campaign has heavily targeted women. So she's been reaching out to those groups across the state. But the thing is, this is because Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016, she's had to stretch herself and go further afield, like to the county, Erie County, where I lived for 11 years, which is a mix of urban and rural voters. She's trying to claw back those working class voters, those old school blue collar Democrats that in recent election cycles have been moving away from the Democratic Party. So she sent Tim Walz up to Erie, and he gave a speech in a park where my kids used to ride their bikes, and he said, I'll paraphrase what he said. He said the path to the White House doesn't just run through Pennsylvania. It could very well run through this park in Erie, Pennsylvania. So you can see how these small counties are going to play an outside-sized role in tipping the balance in what is an incredibly tight race.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling with such a huge country with a huge population that it can come down to that. Now, as to policy announcement, would you say they've been directed towards a state like Pennsylvania, or is it more that Pennsylvania represents the broader US quite accurately anyway?
That's a great question, and I think Pennsylvania is a good representation of the diversity of America. When you think of that urban-rural divide, I mean, you have states in America like Mississippi, Alabama, which are predominantly rural. And then you have states like Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, which are predominantly urban. So Pennsylvania is a good mix of both of that. It has Philadelphia, it has Pittsburgh, large urban centers where Kamala Harris will no doubt do very well. But then you have large rural areas where Trump tends to do better. So that is what makes this a good representation of America and the diversity of the country.
So people have registered to vote now. What groups and what issues are most likely to motivate people to get out and vote in Pennsylvania?
You know, I think the abortion issue is playing very well for the Harris campaign, and I think that will galvanize women to the polls, most certainly. I think when you look at polling data, though, the economy is playing a big issue that is up there as among voters' top concerns. You've got inflation, high cost of living. And for example, where I lived in Erie, Pennsylvania, I think it's close to maybe 20% of the county is over 60. So you've got retirees who are paying more every time they go to get their gas, their petrol, and to the supermarket. So I think cost of living pressures, and people tend to have, there's a sense that things were better under Trump, under his presidency. So while people may be turned off by his personality, his antics, moderate voters, people who wouldn't count themselves as part of his base, maybe they're just purely looking to the economy.
Sarah Smiles Persinger, a journalist and editor at the United States Studies Centre. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.